please be seated. Good evening and welcome to the council meeting. I am Councillor Will Lane, the Mayor. In June 2017, 72 of our residents tragically lost their lives in the fire at Grenfell Tower. I ask every member of the council to pay our deepest and continuing respects in the conventional manner by marking the moment with 72-second silence now. Would everyone please stand? Thank you. Please be seated. The minutes of the annual meeting have been circulated. Are they agreed? Item 2, declarations of interest. Does any member wish to declare a disclosable pecuniary or any other significant interest in any item being considered at tonight's meeting? Item number 3. Because of the general election, this is the first time that we have met as full council since the 7th anniversary of the Grenfell tragedy. We will show a short clip with experts from Testimony Week before the leader's speech. Second, on a sad note, I have to report the death in service on the 8th of January 2024 of Dominic Hurley, who was a key member of the parking services team in which he worked since 2000. Would any members like to say a few words? Councillor Kamali.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is with a heavy heart that we honour the memory of Dominic Hurley, known to us all as Dom. He was an esteemed member of the Council's parking services team in our Highways and Transportation Division. His unexpected passing on July 8th has left a void in the heart of the organisation. It is of little comfort, but we do know that he passed doing something that he loved, scuba diving around the seas of Britain. He took up his role, as you say, in 2000, and for 24 years he's committed his energy and expertise to our community, leaving behind a significant legacy of contributions. His commitment to the Council has never faltered, He played a pivotal role in enhancing the services we pride ourselves on today, such as parking enforcement and pay to park. His efforts were also instrumental in the management of Notting Hill Carnival and dealing with all the vehicle movements for that event, which we will still be feeling this summer. His collaboration with suppliers and partners was relentless, ensuring our residents always received top-notch services. Dom was a friend to many across the organisation and beyond, and his presence brought warmth and camaraderie to the workplace, fostering friendships that extended beyond professional boundaries. I remember fondly working with Dom on digitising our parking permits, spending many hours staring at spreadsheets together, asking for endless updates, and Dom provided them all immediately and with every possible annotation one could have hoped for. He really has made our shift to a digital borough that much easier, and we must all remember that he is the one that helped us get there. And in closing, we have to extend our deepest sympathies to his wife Cynthia and all who are close to Dom. His influence will persist in the streets of our borough and within all the lives that he impacted. His legacy is a testament to a life well lived, one filled with dedication, joy, and an unwavering commitment to making our borough a better place for all. Thank you to Dom and for all of his contributions. We will miss him in the transport team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kamali. Would any other member wish to speak on that topic? Finally, I'm pleased to announce that His Majesty has chosen to recognise in his birthday honours the following people who live or work in the borough. Professor James Ferguson, Emeritus Professor, Centre for Environmental Policy, Imperial College London, and International Institute for Environment and Development, received a knighthood. Those awarded the CBE were Professor Washington Ochieng, Head of the Department of Civil Environmental Engineering and Chair Professor in Positioning and Navigation Systems at Imperial College London. Professor Jonathan Webber, lately Dean, Faculty of Medicine, Imperial College London. Professor Ian Walmsley, Provost at Imperial College London. And those awarded the OBE were Darren Brown, Honorary Clinical Academic Physiotherapist at Chelsea and Westminster Hospital NHS Foundation Trust. Professor Jane Davies, Professor of Paediatric Respirology and Experimental Medicine at Imperial College London. Professor Anthony Gordon, Chair of the Anaesthesia and Critical Care, Imperial College London. Gary Lashko, Chief Executive Officer of Royal Hospital, Chelsea. David Rollinson, a Scientific Associate at the Natural History Museum. And Mark Sims, Chief Executive Officer, P3 Charity. Those awarded the BEM were Sedathurai Chandrakumar, Postmaster, Notting Hill. Bobette Blake, Residential Care Manager, Royal Hospital, Chelsea. Now we have a very full agenda tonight, so may I encourage all members who wish to speak to please be brief. I shall now ask the Chief Executive to report apologies for absence or lateness from this meeting.
Thank you. I've received apologies from Councillors Petit and Taylor-Smith, and I have also received apologies for lateness from Councillors Adorian, Verboven and Wade.
Item number 5 is public speaking, which has been allocated entirely to the borough's youth, all of whom I welcome to full council. I will invite those who have registered in advance to speak to address the council in turn for no more than 5 minutes each. A member of the leadership team and member of the principal minority party will then be able to respond for up to 2 minutes each. We have 8 young people here who have requested to speak. Therefore, I invite everyone to be as brief as possible. I will ask any speaker who reaches their 5 minutes to bring their address promptly to a close, as to ensure that all speakers have a fair and equal opportunity to be heard and to receive responses from councillors. I would now like to invite Akira Belfort to ask a question.
Good evening, my name is Akira Belfort-George. I'm 14 years old and I'm here on behalf of the Youth Council. My first question is, there is an ongoing issue of young people being disengaged with youth services, clubs, positive activities and employment opportunities. What plans do you have to boost youth engagement in these areas?
Councillor Folkes, would you like to provide a response?
Thank you. Firstly, I just want to welcome all the young people here. It's absolutely wonderful to see you here, and I want to reassure you that your voice and your interests are at the heart of everything we do in family and children's services. So thank you for your questions. You're right, I think a lot of people were disengaged with our youth services, and as a result, I was instrumental in saying, working with the team to say, can we do a review of our youth services? How can we make them more inclusive and make everyone want to come and take part in them? And as we did a consultation all last year, we had a lot of young people, I'm sure you were all involved, in saying what you wanted to see in our youth services. And it was clear when the consultation came back that there were 6 key priorities, which included more activities for young women, more focus on skills and employment, and specific sessions for SEND. And I'm glad to announce that the new youth strategy was confirmed last week by the leadership team, and we have committed to invest £940,000 per year for the next 5 years. So that is the same amount of money that we have done, and we have guaranteed that for the next 5 years. But what we're hoping, because this is all about partnership working, that we'll actually be able to deliver more than that amount of money to our young people, because we'll be working closely with Young KNC, who are a charity. And by working with them, they can leverage the money that the council has invested by bringing in other investment. So we're hoping over those 5 years there will be up to another £750,000 that can be invested in youth services. But the key thing about this youth review is that it's bringing together not just our voluntary sector partners and our really key and well-established groups like the Harrow Pub and Rugby Portobello and Earls Court, but a lot of smaller agencies, but also our libraries, our leisure centres, our schools, and actually joining up all the provision that's in this borough to hopefully have a much more comprehensive youth service for our young people. So I'm looking forward to this happening. I'm sure you'll be involved in it. In fact, I know you will be, because one of the key things about this was an investment of £10,000 that's been set aside for young people to be involved in the panel.
Councillor Folkes, could you bring your speech to a conclusion?
Sorry, I've got lots to say, and do come and talk to me further about it. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Councillor Folkes. Councillor Benton, would you like to provide a response?
Thank you. Thank you very much for your question. The follow-up question I have in response to my colleague is engagement with which youth and what's the direction of travel here. So everything that's being described does fall into the category of, well, something up. The council sets something up, tries to get private profit-seeking interests to further invest in it, and then go out and try and attract people to join that group. Now, my view is that actually, when it comes to youth engagement, I live in Goulburn Ward, in Homefield House, and youth around there are not going to come anywhere near a youth council. So what I think we need to be doing is actually going right and encouraging young people to set up their own organisations and support them in doing that. So it comes from the ground up, and then you get to involve people that wouldn't, frankly, and look, I absolutely welcome and admire and respect young people for getting involved at this level, but the truth is you're a minority, very special minority of, so we need more. And we need the people who are the least engaged, the least optimistic, the least faith in local government. And a large part of that is the public spaces that we don't have anymore. I know, for example, Goulburn Youth Centre and various other community spaces that we used to have and just be able to go to, well, they are essentially not functioning anymore in the same way. And again, issues like say, the Youth Violence and Exploitation Plan for 22 to 25. You talk about these, Councillor Fawkes talks about sort of engagement with youth, and I don't know who they're really talking about, is the truth. So my view is that because these papers tend to be very much, we have spoken with young people, we have come to this conclusion as well. But I don't know who, I don't know where, I don't know how the question.
Councillor Benson, could you conclude?
I will, thank you very much. So ultimately, I think that we need to go into the communities and get young people to start your own organisations, the kind of people that wouldn't normally be interested, and invest in that ourselves with the money that we have for public services, not from profit-seeking interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Benson. And thank you, Ms. Belfort. I would now like to invite you again to ask a further question on behalf of Sidra Salihu.
Thank you. The second question is on behalf of Sidra, who's also a part of the Youth Council, and she wants to know, with sports becoming less important in schools, sports clubs / gym subscriptions being expensive or not in reach, and our local GPs not having enough time for us, does the council have any plans to promote healthy living in an accessible way so that today's youth don't become tomorrow's struggling adults?
Councillor Rendell, would you like to provide a response?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Akira, and to your colleague, Sidra, who can't be here today, for asking the question. I'm Josh, and I'm the lead member for Adult Social Care and Public Health. I think there's an echo, Mr. Mayor.
Pause for a moment.
No, it's moving, as Councillor Lowry tells me. Sorry about that. I may try another one, if I may. There we go, without the humming. Sounded like we're on a spaceship, didn't it, there? Yeah, it's a really important question, and I think youth engagement, especially in healthy lifestyles, is really important. And of course, we're always open and welcome to hear your views as well, because your opinions really matter, because things may not be working well, or they could be working better. But I'll tell you what we're doing at the moment, and we can have a conversation afterwards as well, if you like. So our public health team commission a whole range of services. For example, we do the school nurses. I know you were talking about schools. The Healthy Schools program, which promotes healthy living. We also offer discounts for children and young people at our 2 leisure centres in Kensington and Chelsea, in Kensington and then in Chelsea. We also have the Change for Life service, which looks at a range of health initiatives, such as clubs, nutritional coaching for young people, as well as providing workforce grants and suggestions, especially for job opportunities in the future as well, because I know that's really important for mental health, especially for people aiming to see what they want to do when they leave school or university. We also have the Change for Life neighbourhood programme, which is in Delgado, Goulburn Ward, St Helens and Earls Court, which are also designed by the community as well to look at local needs. If you'd like to get involved in this, I can touch base with you after as well, because it's really keen that we get as many people involved in that as possible. And we also have the Integrated Lifestyle Service, which brings together a range of services that the council commissions to provide. So that's weight loss services, healthy eating, exercise, one-to-one health coaching, obviously stopping smoking schemes as well for those people who want that, and making also make small sustainable improvements to your healthy lives as well. As I said, we don't get everything right all the time, and always open to taking views and suggestions.
Could you please conclude, Councillor Rendell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll be finishing in 2 seconds. And how we look to promote it better as well. So the Youth Council and your colleagues and your school friends, etc., can be aware of what we have here. But thank you for your question.
Thank you, Councillor Rendell. Would Councillor Thaxter now like to provide a response?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's so lovely to see Akira out there asking such a very important question. And yes, promoting healthy living among youth is indeed crucial for the well-being of future generations. The council should look at promoting healthy living in an accessible way. These could be done through public health campaigns to raise awareness about physical activities, healthy eating, mental health well-being. Community sports programs should be set up. Invest in public spaces for recreation, partnership with schools, subsidized gym membership, health and education program, and also accessible healthcare services. We all need to work collaboratively together and look at things on a holistic approach in order for us to meet our target. So thank you, Akira, for this question.
Thank you, Councillor Thaxter. I would now like to invite Leon Bavard to ask a question.
Good afternoon. My name is Leon and I represent the RBKC Future Union. I'm currently a volunteer first aider and I aspire to work in medicine in the future. With private rent prices rising to £3,397 per month on average, and that's according to the Office of National Statistics, not to mention the spike in housing prices, how are you going to help young people like me stay in this borough, especially considering that medicine, as you may know, doesn't have that much of a great starter pay to it?
Councillor McVeigh, would you like to provide a response?
Thank you very much, Leon, for coming here, and thank you for being a first aider and heading into a career in medicine. That is wonderful to hear that. And you're right, we need to encourage young people and people like you to stay in the borough. And unfortunately, it is a very expensive borough, and it is hard for young people, especially getting on the housing ladder, to find a space to rent. I'm going to speak with a little bit with my council housing hat on, because the council housing rents there are about a third of the private sector, so that helps the council tenants. And we do have a very new, good allocation scheme that encourages young people to stay in the borough. It's a little bit more generous than other boroughs in London. And financially, from a council-wide, we gave rebates on council tax, £100 in council bands A and D. But I can completely understand that these are kind of probably just touching at the sides of the fundamental issues. So we basically need to keep building. We need to build more homes, and so the good news is we have, hopefully at some point, Earls Court development area coming on board soon, and then up in North Kensington, Kensal. So if we can build more homes, then that will take the pressure off the situation that you find yourself in. And since Grenfell, we have been building homes as a borough, and it's interesting tonight, we're going to be talking about the local plan. And we have, since 2017, we have as a borough helped have 1,700 new homes built in the borough. And we hope that we will get a lot more soon, because I think, I'm afraid to say, that's probably the only way that we can make it more affordable. So thank you for your question.
Thank you, Councillor McVeigh. Would Councillor Simmons like to provide a response?
Yes, I would. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Leon, for coming and asking this very important question. It really is crucial that young people should be allowed and are able to stay living in Kensington and Chelsea, because our borough and our communities need you. We need your voices, we need your energy, your creativity, your potential, and all your contributions to public and community life. So it really is very important that the council does take steps, active steps, to help young people stay living in the borough. Your question actually prompted me to look into the latest figures on market rents in the borough, and what I found quite startling. The median rent for a one-bedroom property is currently £3,142 per month. For a two-bedroom property, the median rent is £4,411 per month. And just for completeness, because this is an issue across the board, the median rent for a four-bedroom property in RBKC is £10,833 per month. According to the website Home, there are currently just 17 properties available to rent priced at £1,000 a month or less. This state of affairs arises from a number of factors, many of which are beyond the council's control, but it is worth mentioning the inevitable impact on accommodation costs of empty homes in our borough and dirty money, and to wonder what, if anything, the council intends to do about this. The revenue rightly raised from the empty property premium charge on council tax could be earmarked and ring-fenced as one source of support for mitigating these high rents to enable our young people to continue and remain living here. But in the longer term, steps must be taken to stop our housing market being distorted to the detriment of our residents by anonymous property investors or owners in our borough. So I call on the leadership of the council to be proactive on this.
Can I ask you to conclude, Councillor
I
Simmons?
will, and look at ways of responding to the crisis. If it is serious about being the best council for residents, doing nothing is not an option. And in the meantime, I will continue to press the council for ways to support our young people to be able to remain living in the borough. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Simmons, and thank you, Mr. Bavar. I would now like to invite Owen Tansley to ask a question.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Owen. I'm 20 years old. My question is that I used to go to a youth club, a 2-minute walk from my house, and I was ambassador to support young attendees. I had to stop going as I was too old to attend. We want to see more opportunities to do youth activities past the age of 18 up to 25. It doesn't have to be SEND specific. It's more about age group. We want sport, trips, and activities that have structure. It would be more relaxing and could enable us to meet new people. Will you provide more opportunities for activities for young people who are 18 plus?
Councillor Foakes, would you like to provide a response?
Yeah, I will. Owen, thank you so much for asking that question, because it's really important that young people with SEND do have activities and things for them to go to in the borough. So currently the council commissions voluntary sector organisations to deliver our youth services and community events for children aged 16 to 19 across the board. But for young people with SEND, it does actually go up to 25. So they do have the opportunity to access those services up to 25. But an interesting statistic is that in 2023-24, 22% of the young people attending our youth services were actually SEND people. So it was great that the youth services are catering for them. And there are a range of activities they can do, such as sport, some of the things that Councillor Rendell was talking about, sport, arts, culture and cooking. And these are delivered 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes after school and sometimes at other of our youth clubs like Harrow, Rugby Portobello or Earlscourt Youth Club and the Lancaster Northwest. So I don't know which one you went to, but maybe it was one of those. But what I mentioned earlier about the new youth review, one of the priorities that came from listening to young people was that you wanted more SEND activities. That's one of the 6 key priorities. And there's a special section in that which is called Making Spaces. And this is a specific initiative in which the council will help deliver with Young KNC to support organisations fully accessible and inclusive activities to support children and young people with SEND. So I think that will be a really interesting new initiative. And in addition to that, we've got the Games Library, who will lend out games to people to want to go and play at home or in other settings, which I think that's an exciting thing. And I briefly want to mention the supported internship that the council runs. Currently we have 8 people on that, of which 3 of them have already got a job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Foakes. Would Councillor Ali like to provide a response?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Owen, and everyone from the youth who are here this evening to meet with councillors and to hear from you. It's really great to see youngsters coming into the council and asking questions. But the fact of the matter is that you had to come in to the council and ask questions is because we did not provide as a council what needed to be done. And I think that's the reality. What we need to do, and I think what we will work with the leadership is to make sure that the youth, especially your question you've mentioned from the 18 onwards, 18 to 25, that's really, really good point of view. That's where you go to university, that's where you plan for the future, and that's where you plan to do the kind of job that you want to provide for your family, and then when you grow up and have your own. And I think it's important, not only if this council does not listen, as you're well aware of, we have a new MPs, both in Kensington and Chelsea, and I'm more than happy to organize a meeting for the members of the parliament to make sure that your voices are heard at the government level. Not only the council level, but at the government level. And I understand the new Secretary for Work and Pension will not only help you to set up for future, not only studies, education, but also to work. Many of the youth who are over 18 and under 25 are not employed. Some of them are not in training or in education. What needs to be done? You are not only the future starts now. As your age, as you're adults, you are seen as an adult for the age of 18, and you should be treated as an adult, obviously young adult, and I will try both from the Labour bench of councillors and to work with the leadership to make sure that we can provide the services and your voices will be heard. And I hope to see you in the autumn to meet you with the newer members of the Parliament, so your voices will be heard at the government level and the council level. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Councillor Ali, and thank you, Mr. Tansley. I would now like to invite Miss Faith Ducardi Nelson to ask a question.
Hello, everyone. My name is Faith Ducardi Nelson. I'm 16 years old. I live in the south of the borough, and I would like to ask, what are the council doing to increase funding for existing youth clubs and make funding more accessible for start-up youth organisations so that all young people have access to meaningful youth provisions?
Councillor Folkes, would you like to provide a response?
Thank you very much. And Faith, thank you so much for coming because it's a really good question. And I'm afraid I'm just quickly going to address my colleagues over there because I don't think they've read the youth review at all and don't understand what it's done, because it consulted about 300 children. We went to schools, we went to about 50 youth clubs. So this has been built from the voice of young people to address what they want. So I'm going to send it to all of them tomorrow to read because it would be really helpful for them, I think. But the point about this exciting new youth review that we've done is that when local authorities across the country have reduced their spending in youth services by 74%, I'm really proud that this council has protected all their funding to spend on youth services. I think we spend more on our non-statutory youth services than any other council in the country. So that's fantastic that we do that. And as I mentioned in my earlier thing, not only are we spending that money, but we're using the council money of 940,000, Councillor Benton, and against that, through the youth bill, we will bring in bids from other foundations that can add extra money. So we will have more money to spend on the services that our young people have told us very clearly that they would like to see in our borough. But again, as I mentioned quickly before, included in that youth review, there is an actual pot of money to keep consulting young people, to have you sit on the panels, to tell us if you think it's working, to tell us if you think we're missing something. And just to quickly answer your question about young people setting up organisations, we love your voice, but safeguarding is a key policy in all our work with youth clubs and youth services. And we want to encourage you to be involved, but actually to have your own youth clubs that you're having young people in is quite a complicated thing to be able to run. So, but we do want to hear from you, and I hope you also will have a chance to look at the review and speak to your colleagues who took part in advising us on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Folkes. Would Councillor Bakhtiar like to provide a response? Oh, my apologies. Would Councillor Noor like to provide a response?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last minute change. So thank you for coming into the full council today to address this important and ask this important question. As you are aware, and also the lead member mentioned, the council currently funds 2 hubs, one in the north of the borough, which is based in Lancaster Youth Centre, and the second one in the south of the borough, which is Chelsea Youth Club. Those 2 centres are open, young people to attend. There's also a number of youth clubs, those of you are aware, Rugby Portobello, Harrow Club, Delgado, and others. In terms of young people being able to set up the youth services, I believe personally, being a youth worker when I was young, we got enough youth centers in the borough. But if young people have an idea to do something on their own, their first contact will be young KNC, who are here luckily in this borough to upskill youth workers and improve our youth services. There's also help available at the Kensington Chelsea Social Council, who are the second-tier organization who helps setting up organizations when needed. So thank you again for coming into the full council and asking those important questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Noor, and thank you, Ms Nelson. I would now like to invite Abdullahi Mohammed to ask a question.
Thank you for allowing me to speak to the full council this evening. My name is Abdullahi. I'm 16 years old, and I'm born and raised in Kensington and Chelsea. According to the Kensington and Chelsea Foundation, the borough has the highest rate of school exclusions in London. Poor life outcomes for excluded children are well documented and evidenced, with a high risk of mental health challenges, unemployment, youth offending, and prison. 1 in 3 young people engaged with KSC's youth offending team were excluded from the school at the times of the exams. Black and ethnic young people in KSC were twice as likely to have been excluded compared to the white or Asian peers. Young people with special educational needs are 3 times more likely to be excluded compared to others. Young people are also facing other issues such as gun and knife crimes and antisocial behaviour. I'm here today to ask what the council is doing to tackle these issues I've raised, particularly the high rate of permanent and internal exclusions, and how the impact of exclusion is measured in relation to the young person's attainment. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Councillor Folkes, would you like to provide a response?
Thank you so much, Abdullah. Thank you. This is a really important question. I'm going to slightly beg the Mayor might indulge me a bit of time on this, because everyone always brings up exclusions, and it's a really, really important question that you asked me that I really want to answer properly. But before I answer it, I just want to put some context on the data that everyone gets these exclusion figures from. I welcome the Kensington Chelsea Foundation's report, but I also want to point out that their data is from 2021. And this is the problem, that the data is taken from different years. So it's very hard to read across the line. Permanent and exclusion is actually incredibly rare in Kensington Chelsea. That this last verified data showed that only 5 children were permanently excluded, and 4 of those were from the borough, one wasn't. And it's important to highlight that there are a variety of what you might think of exclusions, which are actually short-term suspensions of maybe 5 or 6 weeks, where children are actually taken out of their school setting, go to a local college, have some help to support them with their issues, and then they return to schools. And of the children that go on those fixed-term suspensions, 80% go back and never go back to fixed-term suspension. So that's a successful programme. Some of them do come back and return, which can increase the numbers. But the last verified number from 2023 does show that these suspensions have risen above national comparators. But in the latest numbers that we have not verified, that they have actually now dropped below the average. But what is another important thing is that 50% of the children in our secondary schools are not from this borough, and another 50% of our children are educated privately. So you have to look at that in the context of all the figures that we've got. Suspension rates for children with EHCPs and SEND support are really closely monitored, because they're obviously some of the most vulnerable children in our borough. And children in these cohorts were actually below national, and for EHCP, below London comparators. So the council launched the inclusion strategy in summer of 2022, and the real purpose of this inclusion, like everything, is that really we want early intervention and prevention to stop any children to have to be excluded or suspended from school, because no one wants that to happen. And so there are a lot of initiatives that are mapped out in the inclusion strategy, where we work with partners such as the North Kensington Inclusion Pilot, with West London Zone. We have mental health in schools delivered by Mind. We have the Ormiston Academy that does outreach in our schools. And I was really proud this week to be at a unique targeted provision at the called Freston Junction, which is opened at the Ormiston Academy, which is this really unique targeted place for children with SEND who find it very difficult to be in a normal school setting. But we also link children with Morley College to enable them to have...
If I could now ask you to conclude, Councillor Folkes. I've given you some extra time and I will give the same amount of extra time, but please conclude.
Thank you so much. But it is important, and if any of you want to come and get more information about what we're doing to be inclusive, I would love to come and talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Folkes. And Councillor No, I will give you extra time in your response.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Abdullah, thank you for coming in this evening to the full council and asking very important question. The lead member quoted the figures from the council. I'm going to quote the Baibara school exclusion, which is dated back in 2022. That's the only data I could find it, which says the internal exclusion and suspension was at 3.5%, which is more, and that's our own published data, which is more than inner London and the whole UK. So academic outcomes, students who are not in school will be affected definitely, and they will attain way less than those who are in the schools. The exclusion does not only affect educational attainment of the young person, it also leads to engage to other social behavior, drugs, knife crime, which as a result, they will either be going to jail, injured, or die, as we've seen recently. We are very lucky as a council to have in Castle Chelsea Foundation, which has been mentioned recently. It's a local charity which has managed to spend $500,000 on reducing education inequalities through the funding program, which supports 8 impactful projects. They have reached 4,955 children who have benefited from this support. So that having seen the positive outcome, when the council works with the voluntary sector, it will make a real difference to the lives of the disadvantaged young persons if our council, the lead member, the leadership team, work with Castle Chelsea Foundation to further deliver these useful services. Thank you, Abdullah, for coming in. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Noor, and thank you, Mr. Mohammed, as well. I would now like to invite Safia Youssef to ask a question.
Hi all, my name is Safia Youssef and I'm 15 years old. Before I begin my speech, as we're here on behalf of the youth, I'd like to start with an 18-second silence to remember the 18 children lost in Grenfell Tower fire 7 years ago. You may remain seated, but please observe the silence. Thank you. In school, we are given the same inspirational speech about the transition from secondary to university as those living in the top 10 percentile. We're told that we must completely focus on our studies, get good grades, and we must never be distracted by anything else. But what happens when you don't have a room to study in? What happens when our friends are missing in the exam hall? What happens when we cannot take a test because all we can think about is the fact that you murdered the people that we love in front of our eyes? Since the Grenfell Tower fire, we, the youth, have received a lack of extra provisions to support us on our journey into adulthood, despite the undeniable need for it. Is it really that difficult to believe that the loss of our friends gravely impacted us? We, the youth, are treated as oblivious individuals by you. We, the youth, are treated as though our mental health issues that you caused has no effect on our development. Well, let me tell you, because it does. It affects us in ways that you cannot even fathom. And I haven't even come here to ask you to sympathize with our pain, because the last 7 years have taught me that you are desensitized to feeling anything remotely human. What I've come to ask is that you support us in our transition once we leave secondary school. I ask you to support us in the way that you did not support Logan Gomez, the way you didn't support Barak Kaftan, the way you didn't support Nahuda Yassin and Mehdi Al-Wahabi, the way you didn't support Jeremiah Dean, the way you didn't support Jessica Abano Ramirez, the way you didn't support Firdaus, Yahya and Yaqub Hashim, the way you didn't support Hania and Fatiha Hassan, the way you did not support Amaya Ahmedin, the way you did nothing to support Isaac Paulos, the way you did nothing to support Malak and Lina Belkadi, the way you did nothing to support Mena Fatima and Zainab Shukar. You did nothing to support the 18 children who we lost in Grenfell, and you've done nothing to support us. So my question is, how will you support us in our transition post-16 while considering the barriers that you've caused after the Grenfell Tower fire? My question is that even after we get our grades, how do you plan to support us in our progress? Thank you.
Councillor Folkes, would you like to provide a response?
Safia, thank you so much. We were all incredibly moved by the speech you just met, and our thoughts are with those 18 children and their families, and how incredibly painful it must be for them. So thank you for drawing them to all our attention. And I agree, it's really, really important that we support the children who've been badly affected. And for that purpose, actually, we've just agreed at Leadership Team a restorative justice programme, which is specifically designed for that cohort of people to give them extra support in both their mental health and helping with their training, having a specific centre for them to be able to go to get psychological support, advice on training and skills training. So that would be for that specific group of people. And again, we will work with you. We really want to work closely with you and those young people to make sure that that service will be effective for them over the next 4 years. So thank you for bringing that. But for a more broader answer to your question, most of the services for children over 16 in the transition period is actually dealt with the secondary schools and not via the council. But the bit that the council does help with are those children that potentially might be at risk of becoming neat or getting into trouble. And in that time, our targeted prevention team will wrap themselves around those children and those families to give them extra support. They'll give outreach to the families to support them with mental health, to support them with any issues they might have with the youth justice system, to help with CVs, interview preparation, and applications to colleges. We've also got some amazing colleges in this borough, Morley College, and of course St Charles, the excellent St Charles College in the north of the borough. But what is good is that our rate of children, young people who are NEET or not known in years 12 and 13 are actually lower than most of our other 9 family of boroughs in the local authority. So it just shows that we really do look at those children who are most vulnerable in that transition period. But please do come and speak to me afterwards as to how we can support you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Folkes. Councillor Bakhtiar, would you like to provide a response?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Safia, thank you for coming and reminding us of the atrocities and the fire happened at Grenfell Tower 7 years ago. I have been here in this council, this is my 10th year, my 3rd term. And each year I have seen between 4 to 7 million pounds underspent and comes back to the council because it doesn't go. And at some point this council had 280 million pounds in reserve. And at the same time, we have 25% of our children in the borough living in poverty. In the past 7 years, all of us hear that the council is saying, we are changing, we have changed. I agree with them. You have changed, but it was a cosmetic change. ticking the right boxes to look good. But in reality, nothing changed. I haven't changed. I haven't felt any changes personally. 2 years ago, and the reason I say that because this group, this council is run by the Conservative Party. The councillors on the other side can't think outside the box. They don't have any ideas and initiatives. So they go back to established institutions to support them. They don't have many ideas. I submitted a motion 2 years ago, and this is based on facts and practice. Both of my children, my son goes to Imperial, and he helped 10 of his friends, teaching them math, physics, chemistry, and biology. And most of them moved from B and C to A and A stars within 3 to 6 months. And I said, we need to amplify this, invite intelligent youths in the borough who are capable of teaching others, helping their friends on a one-to-one basis. We have never tried this. And they turned that motion down. They said, we don't have money. While we have money in reserve, I don't know how much the council still have money in reserve. So don't expect any change from the council, and my heart goes with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bakhtiar, and thank you, Ms. Youssef. I would now like to invite Amani Chawuni to ask a question.
Hi, my name is Amani Chawi and I'm 15 years old. As children, we were not made aware of the struggles our parents faced in the terms of constant lack of support in our community by those who were supposed to protect us, the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea. In June 2017, 18 children were unlawfully taken from us in the most horrific act of negligence at the hands of RBKC and the TMO, Celotex, Arconic and Ryden. Had it not been for your complete disregard of human life, you would have 18 more young people stood in this room today. Now, 7 years down the line, we stand before you demanding social change. 7 years down the line, we stand before you stronger, smarter, and aware of your failings. But shockingly, somehow we stand before you asking for the basic needs that residents of Grenfell Tower begged you for. You have not learnt your lesson. How are you different to the tenant mismanagement organisation, aka the TMO? Why have you only recently decided to install sprinkler systems in Markland House? You're telling us that Markland House residents lived without sprinklers for 7 years after the greatest fire since World War II. In 2008, 10-year-old Christian Costiano fell from the 18th floor of Whitstable House, meters away from the Grenfell Tower. Because of the faulty windows you brushed underneath the carpet, back then you didn't care about the young people. Why has it taken you 15 years to even consider changing these death trap windows? You sided with the TMO and did nothing. You did nothing for Christian. You did nothing for Logan Gomez. You did nothing for Birak Haftam. You did nothing for Nur Huda Yassin and Mehdi El-Wahabi. You did nothing for Jeremiah Dean. You did nothing for Jessica Abano Ramirez. You did nothing for Firdaus Yahya and Yaqub Hashim. You did nothing for Hanya and Fatih Hassan. You did nothing for Amaya Ahmedin. You did nothing for Isaac Paulos. You did nothing for Malak and Lena Belkadi. You did nothing for Mina, Zainab and Fatima Shukair. Now you must all stand and take 18 seconds to remember and reflect on the loss of these vibrant individuals and the infinite success they would undoubtedly achieve in their lives.
Councillors, can I ask us to stand for 18 seconds silence?
Please sit.
Please be seated.
You did nothing and you do nothing for us. You are not going to brush the Grenfell inquiry report under the carpet. We, the youth, will not accept to be ignored by you again. So my question is, my question is, how can we, the youth, trust that you have changed your inhumane ways. Thank you.
Councillor McVeigh, would you like to provide a response?
Thank you very much. That was very emotional, and rightly so. I can hear the anger and the distrust that you still have, and I'm very sorry about that. And thank you once again with your colleague for reminding us about the 18 young people whose lives were so tragically and so terribly taken from their families, their friends and the community. So I do apologise, and I'm sorry that you are here today and having to remind us about this. I know that we are putting together a council response to the inquiry. Maxine, our CEO, spoke at the TCC last night, which is the Tenants Housing Consultative Committee, and we're going to respond as and when we get the report, and there's going to be a lot of time for everyone to feed back into that. And so we're definitely going to be approaching the Youth Council and getting input from you on that. And well, all youth, we'll go to all youth groups. I mean, we really will. And this is really, really important to be reminded about this tonight, to hear the young people's voices. So I'm sorry, and thank you. And we are trying to do better, and we've still got a long way to go.
Thank you, Councillor McVeigh. Would either Councillor Lowry or Councillor Benton like to provide a response?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks again for the question. This cuts right back to how the council says that it consults, and says that it co-designs, and says that it puts residents, including youth, at the centre of its decisions. I don't see that. I haven't seen that. I'm myself a council tenant. I was homeless in this borough. I have seen no substantive change in how the TMO treats its residents and how the council treats its residents now in terms of its consultation. I'm going to just pay lip service to Councillor Simmons, gave us staggering numbers on private rent in the borough, and Councillor Bakhtiar mentioned the child poverty numbers. And there is a lot that could be said about the amount of empty homes that there are in the borough compared to the amount of young people who simply can't afford to stay here unless you spend, endless years on a list. And while we're mentioning names, get used to this from the Conservative Council. Very fond of curated consultations, and then coming back with against any pushback with, you don't understand it. You're too stupid to understand the things that affect you in your borough. We saw this with the Portobello plan, which the same Councillor Folks drafted, was roundly rejected. That was her response then as well. If you push back against it, you're too stupid to understand it. I'm going to send it to you. While all liberally interpreting data, and at the same time, under her leadership, deleting posts in family services, combining briefs, services have been suffering. So the real answer to your question, it has been suffering, and if you actually did anything like the casework that we have in North Kensington, you would take that smug grin off your face. Yeah? You would. And by the way, I've had 4 exclusions this year to deal with. So your facts are wrong. So to just round that up, the answer is to have a proper co-design process and put young people at the centre of it in tenancy as with everything else. And thank you very much for your question.
Thank you, Councillor Benson, and thank you, Armani. Thank you to all the young people who came in here today. It's not easy to speak publicly, especially about such important topics, so thank you sincerely. Councillors, we'll just take a short moment to allow people who want to leave the chamber to leave. Do members have any petitions to present? I'm going to take that as a no. No. Councillors, this is the first time that we have all met collectively since the 7th anniversary of the fire at Grenfell Tower, which took place on the 14th of June. And we come together today in unison to remember that tragedy, that 72 of our residents died at Grenfell, including 18 children who lost their lives. This tragedy defines our council, and every year we remind ourselves that the horror that people went through, are still going through, and the continuing fight for justice by bereaved and survivors. We're now 6 weeks away from the publication of Phase 2 of the Grenfell Tower Inquiry Report, which will be released on the 4th of September. Next time we meet as a full council, in October, that report will be published, and we will all focus on what it means for us as a council. Earlier this year, many bereaved family members and survivors showed incredible strength and courage by sharing their experiences with defendants, including the council, at Grenfell Testimony Week. They shared their pain, their anger, and most of all, their desire for change with those responsible for the tragedy, including this council. Though we must listen to those experiences, it's not enough to just listen. It's what we take from their testimony and what we do with it that counts. They agreed to give testimony because they hope it will inspire change amongst officers and councillors. We owe it to all the bereaved, all the survivors, and all those who died to be a changed council so that a tragedy like Grenfell can never happen again, will never happen again. We are making changes, but we know that there is more work to do. So tonight we will hear testimony from 3 of the bereaved and survivors: Shah Aglani, Sandra Ruiz, and Hanan Wahabi. Shah's mother, Sakina, lived in flat 151 on the 18th floor of Grenfell Tower. On the night of the fire, she and her sister, Fatima, climbed to the 23rd floor to escape the flames. They died together in flat 205, along with the other residents who had taken refuge there, as Shah stood outside the tower on the phone, powerless to help them. Sandra's niece, Jessica, lived in flat 176 on the 20th floor and died in the fire, aged just 12 years old. At Testimony Week, Sandra spoke of how she last saw Jess playing in the garden with her own children at a family gathering just a few days before the fire. Hanan lived in flat 66 on the 9th floor of Grenfell Tower. She was there on the night of the fire and escaped at 1:20 a.m. with her husband and 2 children. Hanan's brother, Abdulaziz, his wife, Fauzia, and their 3 children, Yasin, Nur Huda, and Mehdi, who was just 8 years old, all died in the tower. Every one of us sitting here this evening is immensely grateful to Shah, Sandra, and Hanan for sharing their testimony. They have shared it with us because they hope it will make a difference, that we will learn from it and put those learnings into real practice. I hope that we can honour their courage by redoubling our efforts to make continued, genuine change at this council.
I am Sharok Gilani. I lost my mother in Grenfell Tower disaster, and I've been trying ever since, working hard to kind of get some sort of a answer to why this happened. I think is worth telling about my mom, and this goes across for most, if not all, moms in the world, is they have this unconditional love and care that unmatched by anything else in this world. It was funny because my mom and my aunt, they were like musketeers, you know, always together, always going out together, going and coming in. And they kind of complemented each other's behavior and attitude, you know, in a way that was funny. To me, it was just like Lauren Hardy, you know, it was funny. It's things they were coming out with. I guess that comes from having life within you. My mother was disabled. She had arthritis and a problem with the knees. With her knees, that meant that she couldn't kind of take steps up or down easily. She went around with a walker, and you know, even with that, she had difficulty doing so. On that night, you know, when one of the neighbors, Mr. Ahmed Shah, he knocked on my mom's door, telling her that she has to leave. She kind of pointed at her knees, saying that she can't go down all those stairs. That's how disabled she was. She was housed on the 18th floor. I had a call from her about just after 1 o'clock in the morning, telling me that the building is, you know, they have fire in the building. First, I thought, you know, it might be in her home, in her flat, but she told me no, it's, you know, elsewhere, but the smoke's in. And by this time, they were kind of in upper level in the building, in flat 205. The intensity and the smoke was so bad that kind of it prevented them kind of speaking in a normal way. So they were scared as we were speaking. They were scared. You know, they could hardly kind of think properly. But they were giving me where they were, the flat number, how many people were there. You know, I think the last 4 or 5 hours of their lives were pure terror. Imagine that, you know, you see you're looking at the faith, you know, you're looking death in the eye, and with the fire surrounding you, with no means of escape. Things don't have to be the way they are now. They can be different, And it is not difficult to make the changes, but you have to want to make the change. Politicians have to want to make that change. There is a phrase that my uncle taught me a long time ago. He's told me, if you settle for it, you deserve it. And ever since Grenfell, I've told myself, no, we don't deserve this. I don't deserve it. We don't deserve it. People in this country deserve better. So at every corner that I've come across, I've tried to make a difference and not just pass by.
To RBKC, how have you improved the culture since that first council meeting after the fire? May I remind you that we were invited to have our say and express how we were feeling at the time. When we tried, we were locked out of the council chamber. To clarify, we were locked in the fire escape. I was one of those people. Later, we saw videos of a councillor insisting that we should be locked out of the chamber. We didn't hear too many councillors challenging him on that. We had just been through one of the most traumatic events this country has ever experienced. What has changed? And if there is any change, how have you maintained and how do you commit to continually improving? To government and other organisations again, ensure that all public servants understand that they are here to serve the public, not themselves. That decision-making should hold people at its centre. Hold yourselves to an even higher standard than commercial organisations. Because you can only lead by example.
I escaped from the tower with my family and stood outside and watched as my brother and his family burnt to death. Taking the advice from the London Fire Brigade operators to stay in their flat. Choosing to listen to them rather than to our pleas that they leave. I miss my family. I am here and they are not. Had I died, they would have been here speaking to you today. I have to be their voice. It is important that you understand I am not going through the trauma of preparing for and talking to you today for my own benefit. You have not graced me with your presence to facilitate some nice healing process. I will share about the personal impact on my family and give you an insight into the horror faced by my brother and his family that night. I will not spare you or in any way worry or be concerned about how this might affect you. In fact, I hope it affects you deeply. I hope it remains seared in your soul in a way that drives change. Mehdi was 8 when he died. He would have been 14. Our baby, who brought so much joy, would be growing up surrounded by and laughing with his siblings and cousins. After the fire, Mehdi's teacher spoke of how much he was loved. Mehdi was a much loved and beautiful member of our class. His qualities were endless, which made him an exceptional young man. He was friendly to all around him, always supportive and welcomed everybody no matter what. One of his strongest qualities was his ability to make us laugh and smile. We knew we could rely on him to lighten our mood and brighten our day. Mehdi's smile lit up the room he entered, any room he entered, and his kindness and generosity to his peers and staff made him an extremely popular boy. He was an incredible role model who most children would aspire to be like, and it was our pleasure to have known him and taught him. Mehdi wanted to be a vet or a firefighter. He brought so much joy and laughter to us. And I want to show you a short video so you can feel his energy and warmth and his spirit.
The roller coaster is going to start here. It's going to go. It's going to be tricky. It's full of. Once upon a time, there was a boy on a boat, and he went into space, the flying boat, and he meted a king alien, and then the alien eated him, and then he went back to Earth running. He lived happily ever after.
And where is it?
There he is. And he went all the way here. Once upon a time, there was a little alien. It was on a spider. He was on a spaceship. He's called Cameron, and he was attacking the police's spaceship, and the police were attacking some aliens on a yellow planet, and then we live happily ever after.
Oh, that's a nice story.
No, I made 2 stories up. I'm using my imagination because I pressed the imagination button in every. I didn't have my imagination button on. I know. I have another story. Another one? I have another story.
Okay, what's the story?
The towers. Once upon a time, there was 2 really long towers, but they were having a fight to see whoever was the longest one. And then this tower wins.
Justice must also mean that without question, people are safe in their homes. Either you will make this happen or you will not. But without it, the deaths of my brother and his beloved family and all those who died that night will be in vain. What will you do to make this right? I hope you have the courage to move beyond your sanitized attendance here today, to measure this message, to ensure this message reaches those who make decisions, whose decisions and acts tore my world apart. Nothing will replace our loss. No legislative change, no settlements, no support. But you can put right what you have done wrong. You can move beyond the web of blame. Move beyond the lawyers and unwillingness to face into what you have individually and collectively done. You can move from being defendants to change agents. You can move from glib promises of change to actual dramatic change that is intolerant of people or behaviors that do not promote equity and fairness and safety for all. That choice is yours. My questions to all of you are, will you allow what I shared to touch your soul and humanity and leave you changed forever? Will you allow what I shared to enter your dreams and silent moments and drive change? Will you share it with those that were directly involved in post-Grenfell, in decision pre-Grenfell? Will you share it across your organisations and with your supply chains and contractors? Will you lobby to make those organisations not here face what they have done?
Item number 7. Councillor Addenbrooke will move, and Councillor Lowry will second, that under Standing Order 42.01, that Standing Order 31.01 be suspended for this item, and the two speakers be permitted up to 7 minutes each to address the Council, and that Standing Order 11 be suspended to allow a fifth councillor to raise a ward issue. Councillor Addenbrooke.
I beg to move.
Councillor Lowry.
I second.
Item 7. Oh, my apologies. Does the meeting agree? Item 7. Statement by the leader and response by the leader of the opposition group. I now invite the leader of the council, Councillor Campbell, to address the meeting for up to 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, there's a lot to talk about and a lot to process this evening. And I know that I speak for all of us here in the chamber tonight when I say we're deeply affected by the testimony we have just heard. And it has touched our souls, and it will continue to drive change at the council. But it would also be wrong for me to address full council tonight without first updating colleagues on the horrific events in the north of the borough on Sunday evening. A 15-year-old boy was shot and killed in broad daylight in one of our own parks. And to say this is shocking would be a huge understatement. First and foremost, our thoughts are with the family of the boy. It is very difficult to imagine what they're going through right now. Police are still investigating what happened, and of course the big question of why. Why such a senseless killing has happened, and why at a place where families should have been able to be safe and enjoying themselves. Mr. Mayor, I visited Ensley Horniman Park first thing Monday morning and met with police. The local MP and our teams have been in contact with local councillors. I spoke with residents, and the level of concern is palpable. People are in a state of shock and anger. I've seen the media coverage of people describing the panic and fear as they fled for cover. The event on Sunday was billed as a family fun day, which is exactly what it should have been. To end in such tragic and violent circumstances is something that cannot be ignored, nor can the concerns of Londoners. Like many boroughs across London, it feels like we're beginning to see a worrying new normal, where crime now involves guns. The Mayor of London, the Met Police, and those now in government need to act, and act quickly. Real leadership is required in this city and on this issue above all else, as tragic events like this demonstrate in the worst possible terms the consequences of allowing gun and knife crime to continue creeping into our society in this city. Sarah will be speaking about our own approach tonight in the coming days, and this is going to include community engagement on the ground. And we've teamed up with police to conduct enhanced patrols in the area, and we'll both continue to fight for more police on our street in the borough. We both believe a deterrent can only be effective if it is visible. Mr. Mayor, at this point, let me return to other items on our agenda. Before I do, I think I should say a big thank you to our younger speakers. As ever, the topics they raised and the way they spoke about them was really challenging, and it's given us a lot to reflect on this evening. Mr. Mayor, tragic events always need our full attention, whether it was something that just happened this week or over 7 years ago. And I've always felt it to be incredibly important to share the experience of Testimony Week with those who represent our communities right across this borough. 7 months on, the testimony we've just seen and heard is as raw as it ever was. I spoke at length in January about the bravery of families involved and what an impact the week had had on us as an organisation. It provided the impetus for change, and as we approach the final inquiry report on September the 4th, I believe the same applies. It will be a hugely significant moment for our communities, and I will make sure that it is a hugely significant moment for this organisation. So we continue to become a better organisation, a lasting legacy from Grenfell. But Mr. Mayor, I also believe that actions speak louder than words. And the footage that we've seen this evening shows how many people, including the young who came to speak to us tonight, feel we haven't yet changed enough. We still have a long way to go to complete the fundamental culture change that we are committed to. Tonight, I want to give councillors an update on what we have done since the end of phase 1 of the inquiry and its recommendations. 1. All fire risk appraisals of external walls for our higher risk rise buildings have been completed and were sent.
Councillor Campbell, my apologies. We're having a technical difficulty hearing that microphone on the YouTube recording. Could I ask that you continue using a different mic?
Sure. Shall I just repeat one sentence before I go through? Okay. As I said, Mr. Mayor, I also believe actions speak louder than words. And the footage that we have all seen this evening shows how many people rightly feel that we haven't yet changed enough. We still have a long way to go to complete the fundamental culture change that we're committed to. But tonight I want to give councillors an update on what we have done since the end of phase 1 of the Grenfell Tower inquiry and its recommendations. 1. All fire risk appraisals of external walls for all of our high-rise buildings have been completed and were sent to the London Fire Brigade before any legal requirement to do so. 2. The inquiry called for an urgent inspection of all fire doors and to ensure all relevant fire doors are fitted with self-closures. We have completed 98% of our fire door replacement programme, replacing more than 3,000 doors in our high-risk buildings. In some cases, as the fire door market was found wanting, we've had to replace them twice or even 3 times. What's more, we are now replacing a further 1,400 in lower risk, lower rise buildings by the end of 2024. 3. Doors are tested regularly in buildings over 11 metres and 99.6% of communal doors pass their inspection this year. 4. We have written to all residents in blocks over 11 metres to offer people-centric, people fire risk assessments. Vulnerable residents identified during this process are offered a personal emergency protection plan, evacuation plan, sorry, Mr. Mayor, a PEEP. As of June 2024, we had completed 748 assessments and issued 362 plans. There is currently no legislation or guidance on introducing PEEPs, and we will continue to call on the government to implement this recommendation. 5, we have installed secure information boxes on all our residential buildings over 11 metres, going further than the recommendation of adding them to buildings of 18 metres and taller. 6, we have implemented monthly lift inspections, including the lift switches, which allow firefighters to take control of lifts. 7, we sent booklets to council tenants and leaseholders explaining the evacuation procedure for their specific block. Floor plans are also stored in building secure information boxes and sent to London Fire Brigade. 8, the inquiry called for all high-rise building floor numbers to be clearly marked on each landing. We had completed the recommendation ahead of the deadline of January 2023. Mr. Mayor, some of this information it's technical, of course it is, but it is important. As I mention it here tonight, because I want colleagues in this chamber and people in our communities to know that when we say we will do something, we mean it. We are sure-footed in the changes that we've made as an organisation, but we are also honest about what we have done and what we have not yet achieved. So when the final phase of the inquiry arrives in September, we will again look hard at the recommendations and what we need to do. In the months ahead, I look forward to working with all members here tonight to make sure that our response is credible, is honest, and is community-led. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. I now invite Councillor Ali to respond for up to 7 minutes. Councillor Ali.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, my response is big to the Leader of the Council. All of them have related security and safety, whether it's here, at home, or where it has been mentioned by our residents continuously for the last 10 months. RBKC residents are continuously contacting us as councillors at RBKC about the war in Gaza, which we have seen the devastation it's been causing, which is impacting the entire Middle East and the world, and around the world, with death and destruction. According to the latest Reuters news quoting Gaza authorities' figures, more than 39,000 people have been killed in the last 10 months of warfare. The killing of the Palestinian people must end, and RBKC councillors will continue to call for immediate and permanent ceasefire in the region, in Palestine, in Israel, and also as well as releasing the hostages so that they can return to their families. I understand, Mr. Mayor, the last Conservative government did not call for a ceasefire, but we had an opportunity for this government, led by Sir Keir Starmer, to call a permanent ceasefire in the region, as well as the Foreign Secretary, the Right Honourable David Lammy, and the State Minister, Right Honourable Annalisa Dodds, and the entire FCO leadership, for not just calling a ceasefire, but also calling a two-state solution in the King's Speech, as well as giving a much-needed humanitarian support to the UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for the refugees in Palestine. Mr. Mayor, on the Grenfell issue, Mr. Mayor, as you know, this is the 7th anniversary for Grenfell. And the video you've just shown us, which I'd like to thank you for taking the opportunity as the Mayor of RBKC to show the video, and about which has been done the testimony with. The 7th year Grenfell anniversary has just passed. The 8th year Grenfell anniversary is just 8 months away. And astonishingly, no one accountable for the death of the 72 victims of our residents has not been called yet, or has not been put to justice. The Labour group of councillors will continue to call justice for Grenfell victims. As I have said before, I personally will never ever forget that night, that unfortunate night, the disaster. It's a personal for me because I have witnessed from the first hand as I was coming back from the mosque on Friday on a night prayers, because it was Ramadan. I will never forget what happened that night, and I will always continue to seek, on behalf of Labour group councillors and our residents, to seek justice for those people who have lost their lives and their loved ones. Shockingly, Mr. Mayor, people who have committed this authority and people who have made the decisions for our residents to die in a really hellfire on this world are still free and not charged for their actions, and that's not acceptable. The local community still will not rest until those responsible for the disaster are brought to justice, and the sooner will be better than later. On that note, I will be in a position to write as a leader of the opposition of RBKC to the new Justice Secretary, Right Honourable Shabina Mahmood, to find justice and make sure that those who, of course, this will be brought to justice sooner than later. As we have seen the testimony week, and people have given their feelings about what happened, it's actually come about as a settlement agreement which was signed back in 2023, last year, as a result of civil claim brought by a group of bereaved survivors and residents who were affected Grenfell Fire Tower against defendants including the local government organizations, private companies, as well as government departments and London Fire Brigade. Mr. Mayor, it's worth mentioning or noting that the link between former Grenfell residents and the defendants, including private companies and the council, is actually the council. That link is formed by the council. Therefore, the local community want to know who is responsible for this disaster as long as it takes, and we need to find out the justice being served for the families. Grenfell inquiry, as the leader of the council mentioned, will be published soon. The date we have is the 4th of September. I hope this will not be delayed further as it happened before, and the government will implement all the recommendations fully. Mr. Mayor, the safety and security of our residents is important, and the Labour group of councillors are working towards that, and I hope all councillors in this chamber will do the same. The latest shooting, as the leader of the council mentioned, in North Kensington, especially in Goulburn, we had 2 shootings, and sadly, one in last year in Goulburn where a woman has died, and recently, most recently, in a couple of weeks back, a 15-year-old boy has been shot. And I'm sending my deepest condolences to both families who've lost their loved ones. The shooting also happened in Delgado earlier, about 2-3 weeks ago, and that has injured 2 young teenagers in the borough and in Nottingdale. I managed to visit them at the hospital, and they are recovering well, and I hope and pray that we all share that, and we will pray for their speedy recovery. Mr. Mayor, the shooting also happened again, another third incident in Portobello Road. Thankfully, the fellow councillors have been informed, but no injuries were recorded on that third shooting as recent as during this month. I want to take this opportunity to thank the local police and our council officers for the actions they have taken immediately after the incidents, and also as a lead member whom I've met, lead member for safety, Councillor Adebrook, whom I've met during these meetings. I really want to thank them for all officers and our local police for the actions they have taken. But this is not really what we need. We need to prevent these kind of things to happen. You may ask, the leader of the council have mentioned, Mr. Mayor, that actions speak louder than words. I would like to know, and everyone would like to know, why are these recurring in RBKC? I would like to think of one of the safest in the country, or one of the safest in London. Why is this happening? Simply because the decision that has been taken by Boris Johnson, the former Conservative Prime Minister, is actually one of the deep issues. Why? He devised a one police station policy in every borough. Imagine all these shootings that I have mentioned happen in north of the borough, and the closest police station is south of the borough. That is not acceptable. And if actions speak louder than words, we need actions, and we need to work with us and together the current government to save the police stations that we have. That also, in the meantime, Mr. Mayor, there was £1 billion in real terms of cut to the local police and the police in general. We cannot keep our community safe if we were endorsing policies that were cutting the safety and security of our residents, Mr. Mayor, and that is what we need to do. Action, again, as if I quote the leader of the council, action is louder than words, and this is what we need to support us and to support the local community. We're here to support the leadership of this council to make sure things are done. And on a final point, Mr. Mayor, we had a general election, and I would like to thank the local councillors, the Labour group councillors, my fellow councillors, for really working very hard in a very, very tough condition. And we would like to see actions will be heard from our bench to the bench of the leadership to make sure this council and our council and residents will remain safe and secure for all our residents. And on a final
Can I ask
note,
you to conclude, Councillor Hurley?
I'll finish in my. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On a final note, Mr. Mayor, as I would like to think of myself, as the residents say, as a professional and helpful councillor, and I'm sure you all are, I would like you to have a wonderful summer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hurley. In accordance with standing orders, I rule that the order of business shall be as printed in the agenda. Item 9. I now invite Councillor Kamali to propose the reception of the adoption of the local plan, pages 15 to 626 of the agenda pack. And Councillor Greg Hammond to second.
I beg to move, Mr. Mayor.
I beg to second, sir.
I would like to just briefly say at this point that given the size of the supporting papers, some of the appendices have been made available online in the supplementary with a couple of copies in the members' room. With that said, I now invite Councillor Kamali to speak to the report. Councillor Kamali.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have before us an incredibly significant document, a guidebook as to how we can make this borough safer, greener, safer and fairer, forgive me, all 626 pages of it. And our local plan is exactly that, a local plan, designed in partnership with our local residents, local businesses and local groups. After the Grenfell tragedy, we were challenged by the bereaved and survivors to look again at our local plan. we promised to deliver more affordable homes, making housing fairer. A promise then made and a promise here kept. Our plan is clearly a weighty tome, as it has been the culmination of hundreds of pages of consultation responses, resident engagement, open debate, and written representation. Our officers, whom I wish to specially praise, notably Preeti Gulagi and Jonathan Wade, have worked tirelessly for the last 3 years to bring this document to fruition. They've been incredibly diligent and conscientious in their dealings with the inspector, our resident groups, and indeed me. They've also been honourable in their pursuit of balance and fair-handedness. This document is testament to that work. Mr. Mayor, we need houses. This country and many in the Western world have simply failed to fulfil a basic goal of the state, which is working to keep a roof over the heads of its citizens, the very bottom of Maslow's hierarchy. This document puts forward our plan to meet our housing targets. But Mr. Mayor, what sort of society have we become where this document needs to even exist? We should be building as many homes as we possibly can at all times. Let us be clear, this is a very good plan, but like all plans, it is a tiny symptom of a larger sickness, a planning system built on increasing complexity that makes delivering the homes our residents need that much harder. This plan also puts forward regulations and policies that rightly exist for safety and the public good, and there is no greater responsibility than ensuring the buildings we approve are safe. This plan includes a new policy to ensure all development demonstrates the highest standards of fire safety, with all planning applications now needing a planning fire safety strategy to be accompanied with their submission. Many of these policies are indeed noble, good, and easy to defend. Where we saw overzealous basement dig-outs, we put in prudent policies to allow some development, but not to the scale at which it causes undue disturbance to neighbours. But there are others that offer negligible protection at the cost of limiting our capacity to deliver homes at pace. And we must be proud as Conservatives to stand up and work to bring efficiency to this planning system. Never again should a planning application process take longer than the actual construction of the building. It's exactly why I'm pleased to see our new fast-track planning service delivering results and speeding up the process for our residents. We should also commend members and officers on pushing to allow more mansards across a number of streets, densifying our already dense borough. And it's why we should hold our head high, knowing that we have pushed historic England into today, following our lead on liberalising the use of double glazing and solar panels on listed buildings. And we are going further still this week with our new guide, which will allow double glazing in flats, mansion blocks, without needing full permission. I am, however, most thrilled to see development opportunities at Kensal and Earls Court finally moving forward. These are sites which have sat as scars on our landscape for too long, and with people approaching us needing homes, the very fact that none exist on these large sites is a travesty. It's very basic economics, Mr. Mayor, forgotten by many politicians. New homes bring supply, supply meets demand, and prices fall. The quality of life improves, and RBKC can prosper. It's really that simple, and it's why we as pro-housing Conservatives can work hard through the lifetime of this plan to deliver as many homes as we can. Mr. Mayor, I'm honoured to vote tonight to adopt this local plan and pledge also to continue to improve it and the borough it serves going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kamali. I have a large number of councillors wishing to speak, so may I ask all those speaking to please conclude on time. I'm going to call Councillor Greg Hammond to speak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I think this is the first time I've spoken in the chamber since you, sir, have been in your seat with Madam Deputy Mayor by your side, but you're looking like old hands, but congratulations from me on assuming your positions. I would also like to join my friend, the lead member, in saying thank you, first of all, to the officers. This has been a monumental piece of work over several years, and the diligence that they've shown is nothing short of commendable. So thank you very much to all of those named under Amanda and her team. I would secondly like to thank the lead member and his predecessor. I think it's fair to say that when the draft first appeared, not every aspect of it I liked. And I think that's also true of the lead member, and he's driven through a very large number of changes to the original draft with a great deal of diligence and persistence. And his efforts have significantly improved the document from where it started, to the point where not only can I vote for it, but I can vote for it and second it with a great deal of enthusiasm. So thank you to the lead member. I would also like to thank the Planning Inspectorate, perhaps not an organisation that I'd be known for thanking, but they, given their decision on South Kensington Station in the not too distant past. However, they've also done a monumental piece of work on this rather large document, and it's quite clear that they've listened to our residents. It's perhaps fortuitous that my friend Councillor Taylor Smith isn't in here tonight, given that how enthusiastic he was about the large tower next to add next to Trellick, and that the Planning Inspectorate has now put the kibosh on that. I know a lot of people will be locally in that area will be pleased by that. I think I can also say that the more realistic approach to targets is a good thing, and that's come out of the inspector's work. As an aside on targets, there is a complete absurdity, actually there's two absurdities on targets, and these are not the fault of this document or those who've produced it, they're national policy problems. The first of those is the complete absurdity that the number of dwellings that we've lost in this borough to short-term holiday lets, which is over 5,000 dwellings, according to the GLA, are not recognised as a factor in the targets for building houses. I mean, how absurd is that? You get to the point where you can lose 10 houses to short-term holiday lets, and then we end up having to build more just to replace these holiday lets. That's ridiculous. And secondly, and this might be a Mayor of London thing, I'm not sure, it's my lack of knowledge, but the destruction of existing properties also doesn't count. So in South Kent Station, that famous case, the Mayor of London celebrates the fact there's 50 new properties. Well, there are 50 new properties built if it actually goes ahead, but there's also 21 existing properties in a Victorian building that are destroyed. But it counts from the Mayor of London's point of view as plus 50 instead of a net gain of just 29. So that's another absurdity in the whole planning system, which completely undermines the idea of targets in my view. But nevertheless, it's welcome that we've got targets set in a more realistic way here. But there are things I can enthusiastically support in here. The blue-green section is amazing, really good work in that. The lead member touched on one aspect of it. I'll touch on another one, which is the circular economy. I think embedding the principles of this in the document is a huge step forward, and it recognises that we must reuse existing buildings where we can, and again with South Kent Station, where a perfectly good Victorian building with the 21 flats in it is proposed to be destroyed. I think if this document had been in place 5 years or 3 years ago, it's very unlikely that that planning application would have gone through. So it's a huge improvement, it's a great step forward. Of course, I don't like every single aspect of it, but as we move forward, I think we can turn our attention to mid-term corrections. I would certainly be very happy to use the Environment Select Committee as a vehicle to attempt to create some of those corrections and to explore some of the things that we can do to improve it going forward, either in mid-period corrections or in the next for the next document. But it's an excellent piece of work, and I commend it to the Chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Hammond. I'm now going to call Councillor Adurian to speak. Councillor Adurian.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank the lead member, Councillor Kamali, and indeed Councillor Falcitis before him, for their efforts in making sure this local plan is not simply a copy and paste of the London plan, but at least to as far as extent as possible, reflects RBKC and our local needs and priorities. Now, of course, I have spent a fair bit of time on the Earls Court sections, and I think we have a fair set of compromises in there. But of course, it remains to be seen whether the developers, ECDC, when they eventually submit their application, to what extent they will actually respect these. I would like to make a wider point also about government housing targets, something that has inevitably influenced much of what goes into the local plan. I believe it was right that the last government, admittedly belatedly, downgraded these targets, and it is concerning that the new government has chosen to resurrect these and make them stronger targets, once again imposing them on local authorities. And it is concerning that they feel that this is the best way to deliver good new homes across the nation. They are not. And while the national conversation often tends to be about the green belt, inner city areas also deserve to be protected from inappropriate developments that harm local communities, and some developments that supposedly cater to everyone, but in fact cater to very few, and in some cases no one at all. Let us hope the new government reconsiders. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Durin. I would now like to call Councillor Lowry to speak. Councillor Lowry.
Mr. Mayor, I approach the new local plan with very mixed feelings, but I start by offering my hearty congratulations to the residents of Goulburn Ward, the residents and officers of Trellick Tower and Edenham Way, who have successfully challenged this council's egregious local plan policies for their estate, which have now been declared unlawful by the planning inspector. For years, residents were fighting against the council's proposed architectural vandalism of the Grade 2-star listed estate, which included the proposal of a 14-storey skyscraper. Please consider the impact of the sheer amount of time, energy, mental health distress to residents and taxpayer money wasted by this council to support a proposal that we knew from the very beginning was not policy compliant. To quote the planning inspector, this council's proposals for the estate, quote, do not provide a positive strategy for the conservation and enjoyment of the historic environment, unquote. Instead, to be lawful, the plan must be modified to conform to the original STB agreed years ago, before the council decided to waste taxpayer money battling its own residents. Councillors, there are lessons to be learned. This embarrassment could have been avoided if the council simply practiced its own charter for public participation, put residents at the heart of decision-making, and took advantage of our residents' ingrained knowledge of their local area to inform this council's plans before they're formally proposed. This failure has now resulted in a further significant delay to this council's target housing delivery, due to the refusal of the council to propose development in accordance with the original agreed SPD, which could have then received public and government support. The mature and determined attitude of residents, such as the Trellick Tower RA, who have recently organised their own professional consultation sessions to inform the council on what should be developed on their estate, contrasts markedly with this council's cavalier attitude towards its own policies and indeed, as proven now, the law. While the council leadership's most egregious plans for Goulburn have been thrown out by the inspector, we still worry about the impact of Kensal Canal side. In addition to the complete unsuitability of existing or proposed transport infrastructure to support the scale of development, RAs and amenity societies remain concerned about the impact of skyscrapers towering over our borough. Whilst I strongly welcome the inspector's emphasis on robust amendments to protect our heritage assets, the poor track record of this council in listening to residents, including those who have now been vindicated, means there remains significant threat of a skyscraper corridor causing significant harm. I therefore invite any of the majority party councillors speaking after me to kindly outline what positive impact new 31-storey skyscrapers, or indeed 42 in the case of Earl's Court, would bring to our borough. If you propose these policies, you should be able to explain them, especially after listening to the testimonies tonight. As the Social Council wrote in their submission, quote, the inability of this council to manage and maintain tall buildings, as evidenced by Grenfell, questions the effectiveness of council policies. It's therefore a disgrace that the local plan is being rushed through council less than 2 months before the publication of the Grenfell Inquiry Report. The planning inspector has noted, quote, it is vital that any relevant recommendations which come forward through phase 2 of the Grenfell Inquiry should be taken into account moving forward, unquote. Therefore, if the leadership team really takes Grenfell seriously, the voices of our youth shows that you heard tonight, and puts learning into practice, you should delay formalising this local plan until you fully consider the inquiry report, including any implications for tall building construction, management and fire safety. There's still a chance. During my last speech on the local plan at full council in February 2023, I made absolutely no reference or criticism of any particular councillor as part of this process. However, in response to my speech, Councillor Taylor-Smith, who's not here tonight, said that I, quote, should be ashamed, unquote, that I should, quote, adopt the moniker of Luddite Larry, unquote, and he also said that our assertion that this side of the chamber are the only side that cares for residents, quote, will fall on deaf ears, unquote. Well, now that I and my residents have been vindicated, I feel I have a right to respond, but Mr. Mayor, I will not stoop as low as my colleague's puerility. I will only say that in light of the inspector's report, Councillor Taylor-Smith, the honourable thing for him to do would be to apologise to my residents, because it is he who in this debate has ultimately been proven objectively wrong.
Thank you, Councillor Lowry. I will now call upon Councillor Bennett to speak. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just need to take a quick breath, I think, after that sprint from Councillor Lowry. But just because he did ask for members on this side to respond to a couple of points, I'll do my best, even though it's not my portfolio. In terms of the benefits of taller buildings for residents of the borough, well, first off, the 42 stories he mentions in Earl's Court, I believe is the plan for the Labour-run Hammersmith and Fulham section of Earl's Court, rather than our side, though we will also be having some tall buildings on our side, not as tall as the Labour side, but still taller than the majority of our borough. I mean, the benefits is that when you're constrained in two dimensions, the only way to fit in more homes is to go taller in the third dimension. And more homes is a benefit to the borough because it provides more places for people to live. And like the young man who spoke to us before and said, what are you doing to enable us to be able to stay here? Well, more homes is absolutely fundamental to it. So that's the benefit. Obviously, always in every individual case needs to be weighed up against the impact on existing residents as well. But that wasn't the point I was going to make. I just wanted to call out 2 points in this plan. Firstly, I'll add my thanks to other members, to the lead member, the officers, and all the residents that participated in producing this enormous but very important document. I draw on two areas where I think we've got a really good direction of travel. The first one is policy TC8, which enables the changing of hotels in the SW5 area into residential accommodation. There's a lot of really low quality hostels and hotels in SW5. I think that's really positive, but I do look forward to working with the lead member in the future to extend on that policy. That same logic applies to other areas of the borough where we've got some low quality hostels or hotels which could be much better used as residential accommodation, especially given, as Councillor Hammond mentioned, so many tourists are now using holiday lets, and I think the provision for tourists is very good. We also need lots more homes, and so there's opportunity for further movement there. Another area we show, again, really good direction of travel, and I think we're actually trendsetters, is in our use of digital platforms. So this was used extensively through the consultation period, much more so than I think almost any other borough has done in recent times in their local plans. And using digital platforms allows residents to engage much more effectively with planning applications or planning policies, even having sat on multiple planning application committees. I still often find it difficult to sort of imagine what architectural drawings mean in real life. And using these platforms, we can engage much more effectively with residents. We can bring a lot of that consultation, especially for larger sites, upstream, so residents can engage at an earlier stage And that will actually be better both for the developers delivering the schemes as well as the residents, because they'll get a very clear steer early on from residents as to what parts they don't like and what parts they do like. So again, I look forward to supporting the lead member and the leadership team in embedding those innovative digital practices throughout our planning policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. I will now call upon Councillor Siren to speak. Councillor Siren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you also to officers for all the work they've done on our new local plan. It's important that we keep this document constantly up to date as the borough faces increasing pressures such as the need for housing. It's a really good thing that we were challenged on community housing and 35% social housing on site. There are reasons we don't build housing, and we've tried to address these in this plan. In the context of adult social care, we focus on the provision of housing for those that need it most. For example, sheltered housing. We will build for those with the highest need. Our strength is in our ability to have a plan. Having a book that we can stand by guides our officers to make professional decisions and recommendations based on our local needs. RBKC is open for business and is open to be flexible, and we welcome developers putting forward things that don't align exactly with the policy, as long as it's for the benefit of our communities. Our committees are also more malleable than these policies suggest. As one of our esteemed colleagues said just last night, policies are made of paper, but committees have a heart and a soul. Councillor Idris is right. Our role as councillors is to reflect our communities and local nuances. Cases that come to our committee need councillors to reflect our residents' views. We will always listen to our residents. A good example of this is Edenham. Even though this makes the site a challenge for the council, we stopped and changed direction when our local community told us they weren't happy, and we will never stop listening to our communities. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm very happy to support the adoption of this new local plan.
Thank you, Councillor Siren. I will now call upon Councillor Wade to speak. Councillor Wade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The local plan is a lengthy document and must have taken a lot of officer time, so thank you very much. My concern is around whether this is a wish list and how many of the recommendations can be practically implemented. There's some key points of concern. The Earls Court site, tall buildings, diversity of our high streets, community and RSL housing, air quality, noise, odours, water and wastewater, and schools. Significantly, the Earls Court development site is primarily on TfL land, with TfL having a 37% stake. This site should be considered public land, and therefore 50% residential target should be required. With student accommodation for Imperial on site, there needs to be clarification that this accommodation does not take away from the social rented housing figures on the site. In the first 5 years of ECDC, only 100 homes will be delivered. Will the government's requirement that 25% of the affordable provision be first homes taken from the first 100 delivered? Importantly, the issue of tall buildings on the site should adhere to policy and not exceed 20 stories. The potential for Earls Court Road benefiting from any financial uplift relies on ensuring the connectivity and the integration of the development site into the neighbouring areas. This is an issue that has remained unsolved to date and remains a high priority. In 5.36, it's acknowledged that betting shops, amusement arcades, and hot food takeaways have the potential to have a particularly adverse impact on the vitality of a centre. It's not clear what actions can be taken to prevent the proliferation on a district centre like Earls Court. It's to be welcomed that the borough has a strategy to deliver more homes, but the borough relies on RSLs for 70% housing provision, and this is an important issue. At a time of RSL disposals and amalgamations, what steps going forward are going to be taken that we stem the loss of RSL stock, as has occurred in the cases of Southern Housing and Shepherd's Trust, for example? What is the level of consultation with RSL over mergers and the consequence for tenants and their disposal plans? What does resist mean in the context of 3.49? Given the borough's ageing demographic, we would like to see more detailed figures on the range of delivery options given the reduction in the social rented sector. Whether the issue of a cumulative impact has been considered as part of the policies on noise and odours, or the consequence when incoming restaurants make alterations to existing older plant. Thames Water is slow to respond, and so what guarantees do we have that the problems have been identified and addressed? The Council has little or no control over Thames Water dropping super sewer project, and so with climate change high on the agenda, what plans are in place to protect residents from further flooding, particularly sewage? A recent modelling exercise predicted that 2/3 of the borough exceeds air quality standards for PM 2.5. Earls Court falls into 2 air quality focus areas, and with the additional traffic that will be generated by the development, and on completion of the Earls Court and 100 West Cromwell Road sites, is additional monitoring required? Is it a wider range of monitoring that's required? And what initiatives can be developed to reduce the impact of traffic on the Earls Court one-way system and Old Brompton Road? Finally, looking to the future, what are the plans for our local schools, given the prospect of the impact of private schools and the proposed VAT charge? We will be supporting this motion, but we hope that you will listen to what we've said as our comments.
Thank you, Councillor Wade. I will now call upon Councillor Folkes to speak. Councillor Folkes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief because you've probably heard enough of me this evening. But first of all, I wanted to give credit to council authorities and then consequently Councillor Kamali for producing this incredibly thorough document, and all the officers have been involved. I just really wanted to highlight the importance in this document that is put upon our local economy. So talking about our high streets, we have world famous high streets, as we know, going from Knightsbridge, King's Road down to the Portobello Road, and it's fantastic that we're looking at those and protecting those and all the things that are in them. But also I wanted to highlight the mention of meanwhile use, which was always a particular bugbear to me when I was doing the lead for economy and business, because as we know, we do have empty spaces in this on our high streets, and they could so much be better used for meanwhile space for the local community, to have community events, to have exhibitions, to have pop-up shops. So this is really a plea from the local plan saying, they're a good thing, please can our landlords also look at this and maybe a bit more flexible and come to us and see how we can use them better. I'm also pleased, just as because it's in my ward, to have a quick mention of Newcombe House, which we were delighted finally got planning permission, because obviously it was blighting Notting Hill Gate, leaving it underdeveloped for so many years. And it's great to see it actually being built, but obviously myself and my fellow councillors will be making sure that it does deliver on all the aspects that are in the local plan on social housing and the GP surgery. Thank you very much. I commend the local plan.
Thank you, Councillor Folkes. I will now call upon Councillor Husband to speak. Councillor Husband.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, as has been mentioned, this has been an extremely long process, starting out in 2020, and I think inevitably some parts of the plan and some bits of text rather overtaken by events. And I think it was Councillor Hammond rightly said, we probably need to start working on further amendments and modifications almost immediately, which perhaps the officers who spent so much time on this might not be terribly happy about. I think at the heart of this, though, there are a couple of points. The first is that the inspector, in an extraordinarily detailed set of examination comments, has changed our housing targets. And I think in the next coming 5 years, they've been reduced to 250 homes, new homes, a year. Now, that I think is enormously significant. It's only a couple of years back that we had a target which was frankly entirely unachievable of, I think it was 788 at one point. So this means at last we have a local plan with housing targets that are actually things that we can deliver. And I think that's a big step forward. I think the other aspect about this plan, which is really important, is that it brings up to date a set of policies, including, and for example, tall buildings have been mentioned, that it means that we now have an up-to-date document where we have said where tall buildings can be, and we've given an indication, the inspector slightly adjusting matters as they saw fit, as ladies saw fit, but we now have something completely up to date. And that's really, and that's very important, because we know that when it comes to planning appeal decisions, the starting point of inspectors is invariably to look at the development plan, of which our local plan clearly is right at the heart of it. And having a document which is totally up to date gives us a tremendous advantage, because we are now in the driving seat. Things that we don't like and want to refuse, because we've got an up-to-date document, it means we now can present a rationale as to how we can go about defending a refusal. I should actually add a caveat, however, and I think this was also mentioned earlier, that in decision-making, we have a great advantage that our planning committees and all of us, we are able to, the marvellous phrase is that decisions should be considered in accordance with the development plan and any other material considerations. Now, other material considerations can include, quite properly, a lot of things. So if it's all done properly and professionally, this actually gives us a degree of flexibility. So we get a little bit of the best of both worlds. We now have a massive document which enables us to defend things that we don't like, but actually, while we still have the scope to be flexible about things that in fact we do. I would just like to conclude by really, I think we should thank the officers. I mean, this is a monster piece of work. A few of them are seated across, Mr. Mayor, to your left, and it's a gigantic task. I think it really is a fourth bridge task, and I think, as has been said, the process is about to start again, in fact, which may or may not be helpful. But I certainly, with colleagues, I certainly commend this plan to everyone in the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Husband. I'll allow just a very short moment for members to return to their seats before continuing. I would would now invite Councillor Dentcode to speak. Councillor Dentcode.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are many fine aspirations in this local plan, but many of them are not for the current residents, I'm sorry to say, and there are some disappointments here. I just want to say a couple of words about ongoing issues. South Kent Station, which many hearts have been bleeding over it for many, many years. We got a second-rate plan through, sadly, by Roger Stirk Harbour, and they're now going to value engineer it. So I'm sorry to say we're going to have a very, very second-rate, if not third-rate plan, if it's ever actually built at South Kent Station. And what a huge shame for that exquisite, lovely old station, which certainly needs improvement, but not what they were planning, probably. I'd also want to add some words about the Edenham site. It's not Edenham Way. Edenham Way is the low-rise estate next to it, which we saved from potential demolition by the council many, many years ago, and it's now listed. The Edenham site is the one we're looking at here, which I agonised over for many years as the ward councillor. I'm glad that the most recent plan has been set aside, and can we please change the architect? They have come up with 3 terrible proposals over 12 years, and we need a proper rethink with a new fresh face on that. And I'll look at the things which are mostly upsetting the local people in North Kent. One of them, of course, being what is happening in Latimer Road, and the aspiration for that is the buildings usage should support the creative and cultural industries, which sounds excellent, but actually what we're hearing from our music, theatre, photographic, art gallery and fashion businesses there, that they're being priced out because of some of the bizarre, rather ugly buildings which are being proposed there. There's a design code which was supposedly produced by the community, which certainly was not, which is coming up with some utterly bizarre sort of Disney, Miami beachfront designs, which have got nothing to do with the local area at all, even though they claim to. There are a lot of issues in there, not least flooding of basements, and the residents are extremely worried and not at all happy about what is going on there, and being under the fiefdom of St Quentin Woodland Neighbourhood Forum as they see it, and their own residents association not being recognised by the council, bizarrely, for 2 years. So there's a lot of things that need to be done. Onto the things which are excising most people longer term is Kensal Gasworks. I'll leave the contaminated land issue to Keep Kensal Green company group, which have done so much work on that. What we're hoping for is a thriving, well-connected, mixed and inclusive community, prioritising affordable housing and infrastructure delivery. That isn't happening. Whereas clearly the current proposal for these awful high-rise, I just want to say to Councillor Bennett, you can get high density with mid-rise, and these very high-rise have been proposed more than anything because of the council's fantasy Crossrail station, which has whacked up the cost of that land over the years, and means that the developers do feel that they need to recoup their losses on buying overpriced land with no transport infrastructure, which is a huge shame. As for the amount of social housing that is currently being proposed on that site, it's either 9% or 15%, depending on how you measure it. And these targets are absolutely nothing unless they're actually kept to, and they have to be aimed at local people. Aside from all of that, we had a bit of a bombshell last week. Kensal Green Cemetery have apparently got a consultation on its long-term future, and they're talking about moving graves and all kinds of other things which nobody knew about until a few days ago. We have less than a week to comment on it, and Kensal Green Cemetery company has run the cemetery into the ground, this exquisite gem in our borough. The sooner it's run by a competent charitable trust, the better, and the process of moving and reusing graves must be carried out with sensitivity, as they have been in other very large cemeteries, rather than how they're doing it. They're trying to rush through a new Act of Parliament, which seems absolutely insane. And I've tried to flag this up to people, but nobody seems to know about it, which I find very bizarre. So there are an awful lot of issues going on here. We aren't going to get any bridges over the railway, that's very clear. I have no idea how they think they're going to get people in and out of that site. So I'm extremely worried about that. More than anything, that a lot of this development is not going to be for the benefit of our current residents, but for wealthy outsiders coming in, and our children will continue to be pushed out of the borough by pricing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dencode. I will now call upon Councillor McIver to speak. Councillor McIver.
Mr Mayor, thank you. I'm pleased to speak to support the adoption of the new local plan. There are not many occasions in this chamber where we consider our vision for the development of the borough out to 2043. And like others, I very much thank officers and the leadership team, and particularly local residents and residents associations who use so much skill, patience and clarity in bringing this plan to its conclusion. That we have 600 pages of up-to-date policy and context in front of us is impressive. That this is personal to our borough, reflecting the aspirations of our mix of communities, how we want to see ourselves develop even more so. This is a privilege we should all respect, and it would be a huge loss if our borough was not permitted its own local plan and just made to follow a generic London plan. Many people have made some very good comments. I'm just going to pick out a couple of things that haven't been mentioned so far that people may know are of interest to me. One is infrastructure contributions. This is underlying the local plan, and it's delivered through the delivery plan. And this delivery plan is meant to be regularly reviewed, and that's the use of SIL, NSIL, and 106. And these can be very beneficial for local communities and giving them the infrastructure that matters most to them. And there are 14 types of different sorts of projects. Obviously very high up on the list: affordable housing, townscape, green energy, employment, health, sport, culture, conservation. And I look forward to working with the lead member officers on updates to the delivery plan to ensure that the most appropriate use is made of these developer contributions to help deliver the aims of the local plan to communities. A couple of interesting modifications I note. One is modification MM110, setting out the improved viability assessments and testing required to calculate any payments in lieu for affordable housing. And as people may know from some planning committees, a particular favourite of mine is modification MM162, perhaps in future to be known at planning committee as the MFI policy, which allows the removal of features that harm the architectural significance of listed buildings. So gone will be 1970s items in listed buildings that seem to have to stay around. But in summary, sympathetic development can now move forward in our borough, and whether it's a smaller detail or a major townscape improvement, I look forward to seeing this new plan working in practice.
Thank you, Councillor McIver. I would now like... I'll move swiftly on then. I'll now invite Councillor McVeigh to speak. No Councillor McVeigh either. Bearing that in mind, move further down the pack, and I will invite Councillor Thalasites to speak. Councillor Thalasites.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I hope I'm not your third choice to speak. And thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'll try and be brief, as I know we're coming up to 9 o'clock. There's lots I could say about planning policy in the borough, but thankfully lots of what I might have said has been considered in producing the local plan. And so I should start by thanking Amanda, John, Prissy, Chris, and all of the other officers that will have worked on it over the past few years. And there's lots in there that I think responds to some of the things we've been hearing tonight. So Tom picked out the change of hotels in SW5 into Resi. This was one of the first places that we trailed our intention to deliver a meanwhile open space in Cremorne Wharf. It's also embedding our new attitude to outdoor dining into long-term policy, which are all quite significant changes that are buried within a 626-page document that we've spent years poring over. A lot of the work that went into this, though, happened just in the 2 years, about 2 years after Grenfell. So in a very particular time, during a very difficult period for a lot of our communities, and so that informs much of what we're seeing here and some of the evidence upon which policies are being justified. But it's interesting because a lot of the work that we're now seeing will have to last in terms of policy through into the 2030s. And so the local plan is kind of doing two things. in embedding some of the lessons that we would have learned in that very acute period after the tragedy, and also trying to be part of the culture change that we've heard a lot about tonight. And there's a long way to go, and this won't have captured all of that, but I think that's what the local plan was seeking to do at the time and hopefully starts to deliver. And to achieve that, we consulted widely, and so I should also thank our residents. We spoke, of course, to our amenity societies and our resident associations, and this became, in the end, one of the biggest planning policy consultations probably in the city. We heard from thousands of people using new digital tools, as we've heard a little bit about. And I think what's been really good about that is that we've heard from probably as many people in their 20s and 30s as in their 60s and 70s. And that means that we're also hearing from people right across the borough. So there are equally, just as many people from Ladbroke Grove as from Knightsbridge who responded to many of our consultations during the local plan process, which is quite a powerful and unusual thing in the context of overall council consultation. And I think that's good in two ways. One is that it's a more representative sample, and therefore you have kind of more informed policy making. But two, it also unlocks consent for much needed change. And if I take a couple of examples of that before I round off, one is the vision statement, which says that we want to be greener, livable and inclusive, or in other words, greener, safer and fairer. You might see what we started to do there, which was supported by 71% of our communities, and so shows that we have a vision in this council of development that has the broad endorsement of the people that we're here to represent. And we also saw that residents identified the affordability of housing as their #1 issue through the consultations. And we've heard that again tonight from some of the Youth Council. And as we've heard, that's a promise that's been kept in that we've embedded the principles in the Community Housing SPD into planning policies, so it's turned from guidance into policy, which is a big moment for hopefully many in our community. It's tangible action, and it should increase the supply of genuinely affordable homes, which is more genuinely affordable homes and housing safety is at the heart of what this administration should be trying to deliver. And so I think as we go forward, there's lots to welcome here. Hopefully we've taken some of the lessons that we should have learned in that period after 2017. Hopefully we're also embedding some of the cultural change that we've tried to undertake. There's a long way to go, but I look forward to working with colleagues to review and update and improve our planning policies in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Thalasites. Before inviting Councillor Kamali to sum up, and bearing in mind time, does any other member wish to speak today? Councillor Yankson, Councillor Knight, Councillor McVeigh? Okay, bearing in mind time, Councillor Yankson, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was the beard that confused me. I'd like to commend all of the work by the officers and, of course, the leadership team on the local plan, and just mention two very quick points. The first one is businesses and the economy, and second one is education. As most of you know, I'm on the board of the Kensington and Chelsea Chamber of Commerce, and one of our key pillars is prosperity for all by encouraging businesses and getting young people into the job market, getting them to set up their own businesses, and of course, as we've heard from the Youth Council, get onto the property ladder. So it's absolutely fantastic that we've got over 15,000 businesses within the borough. We've got 156,000 residents, but we have 142,000 jobs. So that in itself is something that we can be extremely proud of, and I commend all of the work that's gone into this plan in supporting it this evening. And then the final thing I'll say, because in terms of being brief, the plan talks about 3/4 of our young people are going on to higher education. And according to the plan, that is the highest in inner city London. So we should be extremely proud of that work. We should be extremely proud of encouraging our young people to get on and get the skills they need to get into businesses so they can make money, they can move their lives forward, and they can get the properties that they deserve either here in the borough or elsewhere. So I commend the plan to the Chamber, and I will be supporting it this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Yankson. I shall have to grow my beard even longer, it seems. Does any other member wish to speak? In that case, does Councillor Kamali wish to sum up? Councillor Kamali.
Mr. Mayor, very, very briefly, we've heard a lot, and indeed my colleagues have done much of the summing up for me. A few key themes that came through were sort of the flexibility of the plan to adapt over the years ahead, making sure that we are putting at the forefront of our mind people that require sheltered housing, adult social care and education, but also businesses. I was also slightly taken aback that after being told the party to my right are all about change, it seems to be same. No to more housing, objections to tall buildings, objections to density. I really do wonder how it is they believe that these young people that came here tonight will be able to find a home in this borough if we don't actually get on and build them. So we should here adopt this plan tonight. Forgive me, it must be the stupidity that Councillor Benton highlighted that I can't quite understand your point. We should adopt this local plan tonight. We should get on and build the homes that we need. We should make sure that they are the safest homes that we can possibly build, and we should give people an opportunity to live in the best borough in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kamali. Does the Council agree with recommendations as set out in paragraph 2.1 on pages 16 to 17 of the main agenda pack? All those in favour? All those against? And are there any abstentions? I declare the local plan adopted. Given that it is already after 9 p.m, would Councillor Addenbrooke move and Councillor Lari second the suspension of Standing Order 24.01 to allow the meeting to finish no later than 9:45 p.m. I propose, in accordance with Standing Order 1.03, and if the whips agree, I propose to take items 10, 11, 12, 14 and 16. The two questions to Leeds members will be answered in writing, and motions will be deferred to the next meeting. Councillor Addenbrooke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bearing in mind the time and the amount of reports we have to get through, perhaps we won't even get to SO11.
Councillor Lari, is that agreed? In that case, I'll move to Standing Order 11.
So not get there, we've got to do the
Okay. Thank you. In that case, I'll proceed with the business in the pack. Item 10. I now invite Councillor Campbell to propose the reception of the medium-term financial strategy report, which is on pages 627 to 718 of the additional papers pack, and Councillor Salicites to second. Councillor Campbell to propose.
Yeah, I'd like to propose.
And Councillor Salicites to second.
I'd like to second, Mr. Mayor.
Would Councillor Salicites like to speak to the report?
Yeah, I will do so, but I'm mindful of the time as well. In previous years, I haven't, I don't think, spoken to the MTFS, and so you should take it as a signal of the gravity of the financial situation that I feel moved to tonight. It's helpful that the MTFS comes with the outturn, with the Treasury Management outturn, because they are good companion pieces in that they look both backward and now forward with the financial plan. But I'm afraid if the outturn was hard, then I think the medium-term financial strategy is going to be harder. Our key pressures include temporary accommodation and social care, but the sum of the two scenarios that we're looking at
are a range of 26 to 40 million pounds that will need to be found over the next few years, including between 10 and 19 million pounds in the next financial year, which is driven primarily in terms of that variance by the one-off adult social care funding that we don't know about the future of. I think a key ask we would have, and I'm using this public forum to make it unusually, is that government considers a longer-term settlement in the coming years. One of the things that's made it harder for local authorities to plan, and we recognise there's a challenging financial context at every level of government, is that we're getting one-year settlements quite late in the day, and that means that we have to make decisions later on, and our capacity and our flexibility is stretched. But I want to reassure members that work is underway to meet the financial challenge ahead of us. We're looking at a transformation and savings programme that can meet that financial gap, that includes staffing, the operational estate, our capital programme, and trying to increase revenue from some of our corporate estate and key commercial sources. I think members should be assured that that has the ability to meet the challenges ahead, and I will keep them updated over the coming months as we move into the budget cycle.
Thank you, Councillor Thalasites. There is only one recommendation for Council to consider. Does any member wish to speak on the medium-term finance strategy? I would like to put agreeing to the medium-term finance strategy, recommendation 2.1, open brackets I, close brackets, on page 627 to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? And are there any abstentions? In that case, I declare the strategy agreed. Is the Treasury Management Outturn 2023 to 2024, recommendation 2.1, open brackets II, close brackets, on page 627 of the additional papers pack noted? That's noted. I now invite Councillor Campbell to propose the reception of the report on urgent lead member decisions, which is on pages 729 and 735 of the agenda pack, and Councillor Thalasites to second.
I'd like to propose.
And I'd like to second, Mr. Mayor.
This item is only to note as it refers to historical decisions, and the whips have not indicated that anyone wishes to speak. Therefore, is the report noted? The report is noted. Item 11, part 1. I now invite Councillor Hargreaves to propose the reception of the annual report of the Audit and Transparency Committee 2023 to 2024, pages 737 to 747 of the agenda pack, and Councillor Yankson to second. Councillor Hargreaves.
I propose, Mr. Mayor.
I propose, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Yankson. I now invite Councillor Hargreaves to speak to the report. Councillor Hargreaves.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much indeed. As members will see from this report, it covers the full range of activities of the committee for the period that we're talking about here. Whilst the committee's area of responsibilities are very wide and varied, which you'll see from the report, very much of our work concentrates on three specific areas: the external audit and council of the council accounts, internal audit, and the council's risk register. So I'd like to briefly touch, bearing in mind times, just briefly touch on these areas, because I want to note that the report reflects excellent work done by our own finance team in managing the accounts during this year and preparing the annual accounts for external audit by Grant Thornton, our auditors. The audit accounts cover the general fund, the HRA, and the pension fund accounts. And as is usual, our financial team were one of the first councils in London to present its final accounts on time and were considered by auditors to be of excellent quality. I'm always surprised, Mr. Mayor, by the number of councils in London, indeed around the country, that failed to submit their accounts on time, and indeed the number of boroughs that have unsigned accounts going back many years. Needless to say, this is not the case for this borough. The external audit of 22-24 accounts is now taking place. Again, we were one of the first councils in London to submit our accounts, and we will see the progress of that as it goes on. Local government finance is complicated and subject to a number of frameworks and standards that seem to be ever-changing. And I would like to thank our finance team for their hard work during the year and all that they do to keep our accounts in such good order. Our own internal account function continues to report regularly to the committee during the year, and a major piece of work this year has been on the Grenfell mapping exercise, which concluded during the year, and the details can be seen in the report. This was a very complex piece of work, and I thank the internal audit team for their detailed work on this. The final area I want to comment on is the Council's risk register. And again, a very complex piece of work that sits under the Chief Executive's responsibility, but the Audit and Transparency Committee gets regular updates on this, particularly on the management of the register during the year. So finally, I would like to thank the officers and the support teams led by David Hughes, the Director of Audit, and Yusuf Olau from the governance team. I also thank members of the committee for their hard work and diligence, which in this case on this committee is supplemented by 3 independent members whose knowledge and expertise adds a lot to the discussion and debates we have on the committee. So, Mr. Mayor, I have pleasure in presenting this report for approval by the Council this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hargreaves. Does any other member wish to speak? I have Councillor Simmons in the pack, so Councillor Simmons, please.
Thank you. I would like to thank the Chair for this report and for his leadership of the committee over the last year. I would also like to extend a special thanks to the 3 esteemed co-opted members of the committee for their invaluable contributions to the committee's work. On the subject of Grenfell expenditure assurance mapping, the Council will recall that this was the 4th report on Grenfell spending carried out by the committee, following concerns persistently raised by residents and by councillors. This process at the committee represents a significant amount of work by the officers and has yielded valuable and crucially explicit learning, as well as, broadly speaking and as far as possible, assurances from a governance perspective. However, it was acknowledged at the meeting of the 27th of November that the questions raised by residents as to whether the money was spent in the most effective way, as well as questions around the decision-making, are beyond the remit of this committee, are the responsibility of executive management and therefore a matter for the Council's scrutiny function. To that extent, therefore, these questions remain unanswered. I myself have requested a piece of work on the transparency of the Council's quarterly published spending, especially in regards to Grenfell expenditure, given that this continues to be a matter of concern to residents. As Councillor Dent Code highlighted at the meeting, residents do want a value for money exercise, which remains outstanding. I have recommended this to the work programme for Overview Scrutiny Committee, and will continue to press for this because residents do deserve assurances. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Simmons. Does Councillor Hargreaves wish to sum up? Councillor Hargreaves.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hargreaves. Does the Council agree with recommendation in paragraph 2.1 on page 737 of the agenda pack to note the report? The annual report is noted. Item 11, part 2. I now invite Councillor Thalasites to propose the reception of the Administration Committee, pages 749 to 802 of the agenda pack, and Councillor Addenbrooke to second. Councillor Thalasites.
Mr. Mayor, I propose the report.
And I second.
I now invite Councillor Thalasites to speak to the report.
That won't be necessary.
Thank you, Councillor Thalasites. Does any other member wish to speak? In that case, does the Council agree with the recommendation in paragraph 3.1 on page 749 of the agenda pack? All in favour? All against? And are there any abstentions? In that case, the recommendation is approved. Item 12. I now invite Councillor Mary Wheel to propose the reception of the annual report from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, pages 3 to 26 of the second additional papers pack, and Councillor Hudd to second. Councillor Wheel. Councillor Hudd.
I second, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
I now invite Councillor Wheel to speak to the report.
Thank you. Well, I just want to start by extending my thanks to the scrutiny team who have been particularly effective this year, and to our two outgoing chairmen, Tom and Wala, and also our co-opted members. I think I covered sort of everybody in my introduction, but I didn't specifically mention the co-opted members who bring a richness of experience to our scrutiny committees. I wanted also to note this year that we've had some extra large bits of work that have required a lot of energy and commitment from members, in particular the Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the really important issue of mental health provision in the area. And Lucy has led on that, but she's been ably supported by Anne and by Mona. And my thanks to them, because it does require a lot of extra work and extra meetings. And also my thanks to Will for leading on the budget scrutiny this year. Again, a task that involves a lot of additional work. So overall, the work of budgets of overview and scrutiny combines a mix of sort of quite detailed looks at how we're doing operationally, and I think we're getting better at figures for that, but also taking a step back and trying to look at some of the having an overview of some of the bigger items that we have to look at. And on both of those fronts, I think this year, thanks to both majority party members and minority party members, I think we've managed to give scrutiny a bit of bite this year. So I do thank everybody for that. Looking forward, we've got lots of very important things on our agenda, including a continued commitment to scrutinising Grenfell, but also some sort of bigger picture work, for example, on older people's housing, on pathways to employment for young people, support for residents' associations, and cleaner streets, trying to make, looking at ideas like time banding for collections. So I think it's going to be a really interesting year ahead. And I want to thank everybody for the year that has passed, and for us all to look forward to our commitment to really strong scrutiny in the year ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheel. Does any other member wish to speak? In the pack I have Councillor Simmons and Councillor Benton registered to speak. Are there any other members? In that case, Councillor Simmons.
Thank you. I would like to thank the Chair for this report and for her excellent leadership of the committee over the last year. I would also like to thank the members of the Housing and Community Select Committee for their hard work and valuable contributions over the last year, and to welcome the members of the committee to a new municipal year. I thank my former Vice Chair, Councillor Hammond, for his excellent and valued input and expertise. And I welcome very warmly the new Vice Chair of the committee, Councillor Gardner, who I know brings a wealth of experience, and I look forward very much to working with her. As the report states, one of the key principles of scrutiny is to amplify the voice and concerns of the public and residents. As such, the Housing and Community Select Committee has endeavoured over the last year, and in formulating its work programme for the coming year, to be driven in large part by concerns brought by residents. In the forthcoming year, these include the ongoing refurbishment of Lancaster West Estate, the ongoing works at Hazelwood and Adair Towers, concerns around Canalside House, the Earls Court project, and information, advice and guidance, as well as provision for an inclusion of older residents and disabled residents, the voluntary sector selection process, consultation, engagement and co-design, which we've heard a little bit about tonight, as well as ongoing concerns about repairs. As chair of the Housing and Communities Select Committee, I'm also keen to facilitate and maximise resident input and participation in the scrutiny process itself across the work programme throughout the year, and will be working with the committee and with scrutiny officers to develop and improve ways of doing this. My recent attendance at the London Scrutiny Network meeting at Westminster Council was very valuable in this regard, hearing about some of the innovations towards public participation in scrutiny at other London councils. In the last year, our scrutiny manager has, via the TCC, provided some very well-received resident training sessions on scrutiny and how the council works, and this is something I would like to see extended in some format to more residents. Following the positive feedback on this year's residents' conference on repairs and the very useful visits to the new homes programme sites, I hope in the forthcoming year to hold more evidence sessions with residents, more visits, and to find more ways of bringing scrutiny to the residents and enabling resident input to the scrutiny function. Finally, I would like to highlight the point that is made by the Chair about scrutiny being a critical friend to the Council, whose aim is to support decision-making and drive improvements in services to residents through constructive challenge. Fundamentally, we should all be wanting the same thing, and I look forward to working with officers, lead members and residents to that end. We have seen some really positive impacts on the work of the Council, where there has been some form of external scrutiny. In the Nottingdale Future Neighbourhoods programme, in future Grenfell support, with the external scrutiny team, and I think we are seeing positive developments arising from the anticipated public scrutiny of the Council around the forthcoming Grenfell inquiry report. I therefore would like to see across the whole Council, leadership and officers, the same regard for Council scrutiny as is demonstrated for external scrutiny. And that concludes my speech this evening. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Councillor Simmons. Councillor Benton.
I will actually, thank you. I was planning to, but I'd just like to make a quick comment. I wasn't planning to, but just to say I really welcome, I think, anyone that's listened to me speak over the last few years. Co-design and consultation is a really, really key issue for me. In fact, we mentioned that Edenham estate, that was really my springboard into being in local politics in the first place. So I really, really welcome that being on the agenda for housing and communities. And yeah, just to say, and that's something that will be felt, I think, across, hopefully, across all departments and all areas of the council. And I welcome it, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Benton. Does Councillor Wheel wish to sum up? No. In that case, does the Council agree to note the report? The annual report is noted. Given the time constraints this evening, I would just like to clarify with the whips whether it would be preferable to move straight to item 16 on the agenda. Taking that as a yes, it's agreed. Thank you. Item 16. Appointments from the groups. One has been tabled by the Conservatives as set out in the agenda pack. Are there others? In that case, In that case, is the appointment approved? Agreed. There is no urgent business to bring to Council's attention. That concludes the business of this evening's meeting of the Council. The next meeting of the Council is the full Council meeting scheduled to be held on the 9th of October 2024. Good evening.